Welcome to today's deep dive. We are really glad you could join us for this one.
Yeah, we've had a fantastic mission today. We are unpacking something that I think is just a universally frustrating human experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are digging into the true gritty mechanics of commitment. Like, why do we start things and then just stop?
Right. It happens to all of us.
It does. And to figure this out, we're looking at some incredibly grounded source material today. We've got the actual curriculum and transcripts from a youth leadership session.
Run by the Martin County PLE program, right?
Exactly. This particular session was led by Coach AJ and a really dedicated team of volunteer mentors. And I have to tell you, the behavioral insights they are teaching these kids, well, they are profound enough to change how any adult listening right now approaches their own goals.
The material they use is genuinely rich. What really stands out to me is how the session just completely strips away those typical corporate cliches we usually hear about setting goals.
Oh yeah, no corporate speak here.
None at all. They get right down into the psychological weeds of follow-through. I mean, they're communicating high-level behavioral science to a room full of young people. But the foundational truths are entirely applicable to you and me.
For sure. So I want to start by asking you, the listener, to think about a highly relatable scenario. Think about the last time you started a massive new goal,
Like a new fitness routine or launching a side hustle.
or even trying to learn a new language. Why do we begin these endeavors with so much raw, unbridled enthusiasm, only to completely fizzle out a few weeks later?
You buy the gear, you clear your schedule.
Right, you tell all your friends you feel completely unstoppable, and then suddenly it all just stops.
It is the classic trap at the starting line. And the difference between starting strong and actually finishing often comes down to one single factor.
Which is how we process friction.
Exactly. We love the feeling of initiating a change, but the actual mechanics of sustaining that change, that requires a completely different neurological approach.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sources provide this concept that really frames the whole issue perfectly. They call it the difference between motion and action.
Yes, motion versus action. Coach AJ paints this super vivid picture of a marathon starting line to explain it to the kids.
Right. He asks the room what the people look like at the very beginning of a marathon.
And the reality is a lot of them look absolutely flawless.
They really do. They have these perfectly clean $180 running shoes.
Matching brand new athletic wear, they've got their numbers proudly pinned on their chests.
And if you walk up to any of them and ask what they are doing, they will look you right in the eye and proudly declare, "I am a marathon runner."
But they haven't actually run the marathon yet.
Exactly. They're calling themselves runners before they have broken a single drop of sweat.
And Coach AJ points out that this preparation, buying the gear, getting to the line, is just motion.
And motion is incredibly seductive because it feels exactly like productivity.
It does. When you buy those running shoes or you download a new productivity app and spend 3 hours color coding your calendar, your brain receives a massive dopamine hit.
Oh, I am so guilty of the color-coded calendar trap.
We all are. Evolutionarily speaking, our brains aren't always great at distinguishing between preparing for a challenge and actually overcoming one.
So chemically, your brain rewards you as if you've already done the hard work.
Right. You feel this false sense of achievement, but motion requires absolutely zero real friction. It is safe.
But wait, isn't preparation actually necessary? I mean, if I am going to run a marathon, I literally need running shoes.
Right.
If I'm starting a business, I have to register a domain name. At what point does healthy required preparation turn into this psychological trap of motion?
Well, that is the trap right there. Preparation is absolutely necessary, but we often use it as a hiding place. It becomes motion when you substitute the preparation for the work itself, and you let that dopamine hit satisfy you. Action, on the other hand, is the friction.
Action is the sweat.
Exactly. Coach AJ contrasts that pristine starting line with what the finish line of a marathon actually looks like.
Yeah, it is not full of clean outfits and fresh faces.
Not at all. It's full of people who are exhausted, physically depleted, and just covered in sweat because they actually endured the action.
The mentors in the room do a really great job bringing this down to earth, too. Mentor Bob shares his own struggle with motion versus action, and it has nothing to do with running.
Right. 2 years ago, Bob decided he wanted to write a book.
And for Bob, the motion would be going out and buying a fancy new laptop.
Setting up a beautifully organized desk, buying the perfect leather notebook.
And telling everyone at dinner I'm an author now.
We've all been there. It's like buying the domain name for a new business and suddenly feeling like a CEO even though you don't have a single customer.
Yeah, playing business. But Bob explains to the kids that the action is the daily, highly unglamorous struggle of sitting down to actually write.
He tells the room that some days he sits at that desk and the universe just isn't speaking to him.
No grand inspiration. It feels like a total slog.
But he forces himself to type anyway, even if it is just a couple of awful sentences.
Because he prioritizes that friction over the feeling of inspiration. And because of that, he is currently 13 chapters deep into his book, aiming for 22.
He didn't get there in one day of magical motivation. He got there through daily friction.
It is the difference between playing the part and doing the work. The workbook they use drops a heavy line that summarizes this perfectly. It says, dreams are free, but the journey isn't.
You can dream about being an author or a marathon runner for free, but the journey demands a toll.
It connects to a John C. Maxwell quote they reference in the curriculum too. Victory is given to the one who finishes, not the one who starts.
Everyone gets a chance to step up to the starting line and look good doing it, but the reward is held strictly at the end of the race.
So if the action phase is so grueling, it makes me wonder how anyone sustains it. Is there something fundamental about human nature that makes us want to stop at the very first sign of friction?
Well, according to the curriculum, the main culprit is our deep-seated need for instant gratification. The starters, the people standing in the clean shoes enjoying their dopamine, they want an immediate return on their investment.
They are constantly asking, how long will this take?
Right. And if the answer isn't by tomorrow they quit, finishers seem to have accepted a harsher truth, which is that life is uphill. Success is inherently sweaty and difficult.
Because they don't expect the process to be easy or fast. They aren't derailed when it inevitably gets hard.
Mentor Bob asks the room a brilliant question to highlight this. He asks the kids who they think his biggest obstacle was when he was trying to achieve his own goals.
And the answer he gives them is ourselves. We are our own biggest obstacles.
Our own minds are the first things to tell us to quit when the friction begins.
He illustrates this with a wild story about training for the Boston Marathon. He didn't train in sunny Florida where this Pell session was taking place.
No, he trained in New England in the dead of winter.
At 4 o'clock in the morning, he describes the environment vividly. Pitch black, sleeting, snowing, and just freezing cold.
His alarm would go off and his mind would immediately start negotiating. I can't do this. I'm too tired. It's dangerous out there. I'll run double tomorrow.
But he wouldn't let himself think about it for more than a minute. He would force himself into his cold, wet, beat-up running shoes.
Definitely not the clean ones from the starting line.
Exactly. But what I found most insightful was how he handled the moments during the run when he genuinely wanted to quit.
He developed a mental framework that he calls an emotional check. When his brain was screaming at him to stop because it was too cold or too hard, he would systematically check his physical reality to bypass that panic response.
He'd ask himself, are my feet okay? Yes. Or my calves okay? Yes.
Thighs, back, arms, all functional.
He grounded himself in reality. Once he realized his body was actually fine and it was just his mind playing tricks to seek comfort, he would literally tell his brain to shut up.
But he didn't tell himself to go run another 10 miles. He played a trick on his own psychology using micro milestones.
Right. He'd say, just run to the next set of double doors. And once he got there, he'd say, just run to the next fence.
Breaking the ultimate goal down into those micro milestones is essential for sustaining action. If the finish line is the only place you allow yourself to experience a sense of achievement, you will burn out long before you get there.
You need small, constant injections of progress.
The curriculum applies this to a great school-related analogy. Let's say a student has an F in biology and they decide they are committed to getting an A.
If their only measure of success is that final A on the report card, they're setting themselves up for a massive letdown. They can't leap straight from an F to an A.
The kids talked about this in the context of grades, but for anyone listening, this is the exact same psychological trap as trying to dig yourself out of $20,000 of credit card debt.
Or trying to secure a massive promotion at work.
Right. If your only victory condition is being completely debt-free, those first $500 payments are going to feel useless. You will look at the remaining balance, feel entirely defeated, and likely give up.
You have to celebrate reaching a C first. You have to feel genuinely good about paying off that first $1,000.
The mentors compare it to running a race and reaching the 5-mile mark where volunteers hand out water or an energy gel. You need those small moments of refueling.
Those smaller milestones to prevent burnout.
Which leads right into a vital distinction the workbook makes. It draws a very hard line in the sand between being merely interested in something and being genuinely committed to it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The workbook defines interest as doing something only when it is convenient.
You do it when all the conditions line up perfectly, when you feel motivated and when the weather is nice.
But commitment is doing it regardless of convenience. You do it when the universe isn't speaking to you.
You do it when it's sleeting at 4 a.m.
You do it when you are exhausted from a long day at work, but you still need to study for that certification.
Yeah.
Commitment is completely independent of ideal conditions.
To help visualize how to maintain this relentless kind of commitment, the curriculum introduces a concept called the cycle of commitment.
It is a continuous 5-step loop. Test, fail, learn, improve, and re-enter.
Test, fail, learn, improve, re-enter. Coach AJ poses a profound question to the room about this cycle. He asks the kids, why doesn't the cycle start with learn?
Which is such a good question, because I know my instinct is to want to learn everything first.
Yes.
I want to read the manual, watch 20 YouTube tutorials, read the reviews, and study the mechanics.
So that when you finally step up to try something, you are absolutely perfect on the very first attempt.
Exactly.
That is the perfectionism trap. We are terrified of looking foolish, especially as adults. But Coach AJ explains that if you wait to learn everything perfectly before you try, you will never actually take action.
If you are holding out for that flawless zero-risk scenario,
right, you have to start with test. You have to jump into the arena fully knowing and accepting that the very next step in the cycle is fail.
It completely reframes failure. Failure is no longer the end of the road. It is a built-in mandatory step in the process.
You test, you inevitably fail, and only then do you have the real-world data required to actually learn.
It reminds me of the difference between how kids and adults approach learning. Kids expect to fall off a skateboard 100 times before they land a trick.
They accept the fail stage.
But as adults, we expect to master a new software or a new management role on day one. And when we don't, we think we are imposters.
But you can only improve and re-enter once you have the data from failing.
Coach AJ applies this cycle to a scenario that is incredibly relevant. He talks about what happens when you break a streak.
When we fall off the wagon.
Right. Let's say a student in the program who is trying to quit vaping makes it 4 days but relapses on the 5th. Or for a very relatable adult example, think about trying to stick to a strict budget.
You do great for 10 days.
But on day 11, you slip up and buy a $5 coffee. What is our normal reaction to that single slip-up?
Our normal reaction is catastrophic defeat. We think the streak is broken, all the progress is permanently lost, and we have to scrap everything and start completely over at day one.
We think, well, I ruined the budget spreadsheet with that coffee. I might as well order expensive takeout for the rest of the week.
We treat one single failure as a total systemic collapse.
But Coach AJ clarifies that this is completely the wrong way to look at it. When you mess up on day 5, you haven't ruined the whole journey. You have simply hit the fail stage of the cycle.
You are still actively inside the process of commitment.
That paradigm shift changes everything. You don't lose the progress of the first 4 days. You don't carry the heavy baggage of starting from scratch.
You just need to move to the next step, which is learn. You figure out what triggered the relapse or why you broke the budget that day.
You improve your strategy, maybe avoiding that particular coffee shop on your commute, and you re-enter the very next day.
You are just in the middle of the loop. Keep spinning the wheel.
And spinning that wheel means you're going to encounter a lot of adversity. But the session offers a perspective on obstacles that completely flips the script on how I've always viewed them.
How did you usually view them?
I always saw resistance as a sign that I was doing something wrong or a sign that I needed to pivot.
Coach AJ tells the kids the exact opposite. He says that if you are facing obstacles, you should actually be encouraged. Because if you are facing resistance, it means you are moving forward. You are going uphill.
He says, I promise you, if you stand still and everybody else around you is walking by and doing their thing and going uphill, you will not face one obstacle.
It's basic physics applied to life. If you are standing completely still, you won't feel the wind in your face.
If you are sliding downhill, letting your bad habits take over and taking the path of least resistance, everything feels incredibly easy.
The presence of an obstacle isn't a sign that you should quit. It is literal confirmation that you are in motion. Real action, not just the dopamine kind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how we view success entirely. Coach AJ makes a statement about how the world judges us. He says that people and opportunities do not choose you based on how you look at the starting line.
Nobody cares about the clean shoes or the expensive laptop.
Opportunities choose you based on how you handle adversity. They look at what you do after you have failed for the first time, a second time, or the third time.
That resilience, that willingness to stay in the cycle and re-enter when it's uncomfortable is what makes you valuable.
It's what separates the interested from the committed. And it all boils down to a concept the workbook calls make today count.
You cannot be committed to a finish line if you aren't committed to the single step you are taking today.
The secret to success isn't shrouded in mystery. It is determined by your daily agenda. It's not about grand sweeping gestures. It's about getting just 1% better today.
Just 1%. If you can get 1% better today and string that together with another 1% tomorrow, you start building a chain.
Mentor Button summarized it beautifully. He said, every day is a link. And all of a sudden, one day, that whole chain is built, and people say, oh, you're so lucky. But the harder you work, the luckier you will be.
It completely removes the magic from achievement. It's not luck. It's simply the willingness to endure friction day after day, regardless of convenience.
So what does this all mean? We have covered a lot of ground today, digging into the insights from this Martin County PL session. Let's bring it all together for you. The big takeaways here are incredibly practical. First, you have to recognize the difference between the cheap dopamine hit of motion buying the gear, organizing the desk, talking about the goal, and the actual sweaty friction of action.
Second, remember that you cannot leap from the starting line to the finish line in a single bound. Whether it's a biology grade or paying off a mortgage, you must break the uphill journey down into manageable micro milestones to keep yourself fueled.
And finally, when you inevitably stumble, do not throw away your progress. Do not let one $5 coffee ruin your week. Trust the cycle of commitment. You haven't failed permanently. You've just reached the fail step. So learn to improve and re-enter tomorrow.
This raises an important question, something we should all ask ourselves when we evaluate our own lives and the goals we claim to care so much about.
I love this, and I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. Look closely at the path you are on right now. If you are not facing any resistance, if you aren't hitting any obstacles, failing occasionally, or experiencing any friction in your life, are you actually committed to a goal? Or are you just standing completely still, looking great in a really clean pair of running shoes? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these insights, embrace the friction, and start building your chain today. Catch you next time.